Good morning. It's the day before Easter, and today I'm going to make my Easter rye bread. It's something I've been doing for over 40 years now. It started off small and people liked it, so it became gifts for everybody. And it's gotten to the point now I usually make like 16 loaves. But the recipe I'm going to give you is for 2. Right now I'm going to be making 8 in one batch. That's why the enormous bowl. To start with, I put the molasses, in this case it was 1 whole jar, but the recipe will tell you what it is for 2 loaves, into this bowl. And I put the butter.
Is the butter melted? Is the butter softened?
And the salt. And in this case it's 2 quarts of water for this huge batch. I usually don't measure like anything to speak of. I just do it because I've been doing this so long. But the water is the only thing I really measure, because that kind of determines the size and how much flour it's going to use. More water, more flour. So I accurately measure the water. Start with nice hot water, hotter than you'd normally use for yeast, because I'm going to dissolve some other things before we do the yeast. The next thing I'm going to put in is the rye flour. And then I'm going to take that and whisk that in, which will melt the butter, dissolve the salt. And what we do is we check because I started with a fairly little hotter than tap water, I keep putting in these ingredients until the side of the bowl gets down to just a nice warm temperature, kind of like you would, like the yeast package says, 100, 110 degrees, thereabouts. And we're just about there now. And before we do, we'll start putting a little flour in there. Actually, I can just dump some to cool it down a little bit more. Doing it this way is a little trick I came up with to try to make the whole process go faster. Because if you start with water the right temperature for the yeast, and you start putting ingredients in, you end up cooling it down, and I don't want to do that. So I'm feeling the side of the bowl. It feels just nice and warm. So now we're going to add the yeast and continue stirring that around. And I've got caraway seeds in the recipe because that's the way most rye bread is. But if you don't like caraway seeds, or someone is allergic to them, just skip them. It really has no effect on the recipe. Put those in. And then we're going to start adding the flour. And I'm going to put it in and continue with this big whisk until it gets too sticky for the whisk. And then we're going to continue with a big mixing spoon, and then on to just hands-on kneading it into. Well, I've been adding the flour, and I went past the whisking to the stirring with this spoon over here, and I think I've got almost enough flour in, so now we're going to knead it like this, all by hand. I mean, this could be done with some sort of a machine too, but I don't have anything big enough for this. For the 1 or 2 loaves, you could, if this is too much work for you, you could try some sort of a machine. But we're going to do this. It's probably another 10 minutes or so, and we'll be back to show you what it looks like. Well, we're back again. I'm all tired out and messy from kneading this dough for 10 or 15 minutes or so. But this is what it looks like. It looks like a giant loaf of rye bread. And you want to get it so it feels very elastic and smooth. And when you do this, it bounces back pretty much all the way. That means the gluten is activated and it's pretty much ready to go in for its first rising. Back in about an hour. Okay, we're back. Here's my big piece of dough here that rose to about twice its size. It's nice and airy. And I use this countertop to work because it's so large. I washed it and sanitized it so it's nice and clean. And we'll use it you could use a board for a smaller batch. So basically what I do with this is gonna be 8 loaves. So I divide it. In half, in half, in half, and then in half for each one of these pieces. They don't all come out the same size, but pretty close. We'll put these aside, and I'll finish those later, but I have a little bit of oil on here too to keep it from sticking, as well as on my hands. So basically we take this and roll it in on itself. Actually, I got a little too much oil on my hands. Don't really need that much. And you just keep working it and pulling it towards the center and down. This is like the key to making the loaf look right. And you keep rolling it into itself like this. And then pick it up like that and keep pinching and squeezing these things together. And pat it and make sure it's all sealed up. And when you're happy with the shape, pop it in a pan. And that's going to go to rise for roughly another hour.
How do you oil the pan?
And the pans are all oiled too. They could be non-stick, but these are regular pans. And we'll be back in a bit. Hi, we're back. The bread is finished rising in the pans. As you can see, they've puffed up pretty well. And now they're ready to go in the oven. What I do with, it explains on the recipe, is I start the oven at 450. I really want like 15 minutes at 425, but by starting it at 450, all this time I have it open to put everything in, it doesn't drop too much. So we put those in. And then we turn it down right away to 425. And then I'm going to run that for 15 minutes and then knock it down to 350 for another 40 or 50. We'll see you in a bit. Hi, we're back again. Just took them out of the oven. And the last step, which is of course optional, is putting egg white on the top of these, which gives them a real nice shine. It doesn't really add any taste. It's strictly for a look. So if you choose not to use eggs or are vegan or something like that, or are allergic, skip the eggs. There you go. Done.